Well, good afternoon. And once again, welcome to another Facebook Live, soon to be podcast. And our third afternoon session, I believe. Debbie, how are you? Rita, Marcia, Nativity. Hello, everyone. Good to have you on with us this afternoon. Michael from Wawa, and Claudie, and Joan, and Joanne, and Monique, and Nicole. Great to have you guys on. Mary Jane from Connecticut, Anna, and Elizabeth, and Annette, Diane, bonjour. Star, how are you? And Nancy, okay. Thanks for coming on this afternoon. John and Maria and Wanda and Rita. You guys are great. Mary, Fatima, how are you, Fatima? Dave, good to have you on. Denise, I realize that for a lot of people, they're so used to me in the morning. Denise, good to have you on. Yolande, how are you? Diane, and a lot of my crowd that comes in the morning is, a lot of them are on this afternoon, which is much appreciated. And Bernice, okay, good to have you guys on with us. Okay, what we're going to talk about. Yesterday, I talked to you about the radio talk show that I listened to on Sunday, where a guy called into a radio show and didn't know what to do with his daughter who had become a vegetarian. And we sort of talked about that and how that all started, how it really took off, and now is, to me, it's a big issue in society. And I'm going to develop that a little bit more today, but not so much just being, you can be a good eater in terms of being a vegetarian and be a good eater. Vegan, I got trouble with it because I just can't, you're missing way too many things. Vegetarian, you know, if you eat some eggs and some dairy like cheese, well, at least you're getting some good nutrition there. I don't agree with it, but certainly better than being a vegan. But today I want to talk to you about, I was just thinking about this, the consequences of the low-fat craze. Because let me tell you something. A huge part of this is the low-fat thing. Because people have it in their head that that's got to be good for them. They look at fat dripping around bacon, for example, or they see grease, and in their mind, they just think that stuff isn't good for me. You know, they might like the smell of bacon, but they say, well, I can't eat that stuff. It's not good for me. And the same thing with a steak. Oh, look at all the fat. And if you cook up hamburger, you see all the grease. And so the consequences are you're getting a whole generation now of people that are vegetarians or vegans, and they're being fooled, as I think I really went into some detail yesterday, but today I want to talk about just this whole low-fat thing and what that's done to our society today. The consequences have been deadly, in my opinion, of the low-fat craze. So remember now, we got to go back a lot of years for the low-fat. Low-fat didn't happen yesterday. Low-fat occurred, started to, if you read the history of low-fat eating, it started somewhere in the 50s. Historically, if you look at it, one of the big events, I think Eisenhower in the 1950s President Eisenhower had a heart attack. And, you know, many of you might certainly not remember that. I was just a boy when President Eisenhower had a heart attack, and I think he died in 1960. Now, I didn't even Google it. I should have. But I know he had a heart attack because when I was doing my history of nutrition, that part came in because there was a fellow that I'd mentioned before. I call him a serial killer. His name was Ancel Keys. He was a researcher, and he said that President Eisenhower, and he got lots of ink. As a matter of fact, he would have, in the nutrition circles, was probably the #1 guru of the 1950s, the 1960s, and even into the 1970s. His name was Ancel Keys. Now, there was others that came after him, like Adele Davis. I remember studying under Adele Davis. And their whole raison d'etre was fat makes you unwell. Fat causes heart disease. Well, especially with Ancel Keys, because his whole premise was that Eisenhower had cholesterol in his blood vessels at the site of his infarct, and that's what caused his heart attack, was the cholesterol, and therefore we need to cut out fat in our diet. And really, guys, the rest is history. So you had this whole movement started mainly by one researcher. And the whole nutrition bought it. The whole nutrition industry bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. It's what made the cereals famous. Right? Made the cereals famous. It made margarine famous. Crisco was already famous. You know, and so if you understand that, but, you know, I'm really adamant about cutting out sugar in the diet. You know that. If you do nothing else, cut your sugars out. That'll be a huge step. But I just want to explain to you what I've seen as a terrible, terrible consequence of not just sugar going up, because when you lower fat in food, you generally have to add something. Fat gives food generally taste. Now, we've talked about this a lot, that as animal fat came down, then we saw vegetable oils going up. These are seed oils. They are very unhealthy. They elevate your omega-6 compared to fish and steak and the animal kingdom, which gives you your high sources of omega-3. Now, I'm talking about EPA and DHA. So there was a big switch in fat. The omega-3s went way down and the omega-6s went way up. What have been the consequences of that? What has been the consequences? Still today, I bet you if you did a survey, you would find that the vast majority of people still believe that fat isn't good for you. They didn't get the memo from the Inuit. Eating blubber, eating fat. And they're a much healthier population in general than we are. They don't know what heart disease is. You know when the Inuit get heart disease? When they eat McDonald's. When you introduce our way of eating into the culture, that's when they get sick. One of the best examples, and I don't want to push this too far, but to our First Nations people, when they got away from eating off the land and ate white man's food, what you call white man's food, that's when they get sick. So the consequences have been dire, guys. They really have. Low-fat diet has been a disaster health-wise. Now, I want to talk to you about a few things that, first of all, that you might be surprised, maybe not so much if you've been listening to me, but you would find this surprising. Okay? When you eat low fat. So when you eat vegetables, they're wonderful. You eat fruit, they're wonderful. But that's low fat. Right? That's low fat. They're good. I'm not saying they're no good. I'm just telling you that they don't have animal fat in there. They don't have cholesterol. That, if you want to know, you want to pass, let's say I was to give you a test. Here's a question I would ask you. Where is cholesterol found? And all you have to remember is cholesterol is found in the animal kingdom. It's not in the plants. There's no cholesterol in plants. Okay, that's Nutrition 101. It's amazing how dietitians and things like they forget that. But when you think fat is bad, that fat is, you don't want to be eating fat. You are, and then some fat, for example, like avocado, it's got fat in it. And I'm not saying avocados are no good. I'm not saying that. But it's not animal fat. It's not animal fat. And you eat some peanuts and, there's fat in macadamia nuts and peanuts and that. It's not the same. It's not DHA and it's not EPA. There's none of that in there. Those are in the animal products, those fatty acids. The consequences have been dire. And let me give you a couple ones that you would find maybe a little bit, I don't know, off the normal, things that you would read on the internet. Okay, so I made out a list here, and I don't want to spend that much time on every one of them, but use it or lose it. What we have today, as a matter of fact, in Ontario, I was reading the press release of the government, okay, because they shut down the whole province yesterday, even though there's no COVID in Northern Ontario, whatever. Anyway, I don't want to get into the politics of it. I was, shutting down, in my opinion, is not the best thing. That's the worst thing. But that's just me, okay? That's me, and if you want to go private, I'll tell you privately. But I read the press release, and they were saying, well, you see, we got to catch up on surgeries. And if people are coming into the hospital with COVID, then we're not going to be able to catch up on all the surgeries that we put off because of COVID. They put all these surgeries off. You know what one of the surgeries they mentioned? gallbladder. Now, once again, you heard it here. The reason we see so much gallbladder problems, especially amongst the women, it's 90-10, because women bought the lie that salad was better for them than a hamburger. And if you were to take a survey today, I bet you dollars to donuts, if you did a survey and you put, okay, what's better? Oh, Dr. Martin, it's a Caesar salad. I don't care. You're not a rabbit. You put salad and then you put a hamburger. You put salad or you put bacon. And I guarantee you that it'll be 95% to 5%. What's better for you? And you will get the salad. Yeah, but Dr. Martin, it's spinach. Well, Popeye lied. Popeye didn't get his muscles, ladies, from spinach. He didn't. He lied. Now, am I saying spinach is no good? No. I'm just saying it's not as good as a hamburger for you. It's not as good as bacon for you. That's all I'm saying. But the reason you lose your gallbladder, ladies, is because you don't use it. And you use it or lose it. Why would you lose your gallbladder? Because your gallbladder is a little reservoir for bile. You know what bile does? It emulsifies fat. You ever used dish soap before? My wife sends me to the grocery store and she said, get the one that removes grease. Okay, dear. So I look for one that removes grease, the dish soap that removes grease. Well, that's what your bile does. It emulsifies fat. Your gallbladder is just a little reservoir for bile. And you need your gallbladder doesn't produce the bile, your liver does. But your gallbladder, if you don't use it, that bile sits there, and guess what? Now you start forming sludge and stones. That's what happens. And that's why you see so many women that lose their gallbladder. It was amazing. We talked about the gallbladder, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And after the program, I went down and I scrolled down to say hello to all our listeners. And it was amazing how many women said, yeah, Doc, you're right. I lost my gallbladder. Doc, I lost my gallbladder. I lost my gallbladder. Yeah, I heard it about 50 times. Use it or lose it. And when I hear, like somebody said this online, I think I tried to answer the question Friday if my memory serves me right. Somebody asked on question and answer Friday. By the way, question and answer this week will be Thursday because it'll be Christmas Eve. And we're going to do that Thursday. We're going to do the question. So if you got questions, but somebody asked a question because I think they saw it online that if someone had gallbladder problems, there was a doctor who said, well, just stop eating eggs and your gallbladder will clear up. It might clear up temporarily. But you have to understand the function of your gallbladder. You need a gallbladder. God gave you a gallbladder. You know why? Because He wanted you to eat fat, animal fat, bacon, steak, cheese, eggs, cream, Now, just by the way, the odd time the gallbladder, when you haven't used it and then you get on the reset and, the reset is eggs, meat, and cheese. Well, doc, what about, I said it's eggs, meat, and cheese. Well, what about, I said it's eggs, meat, and cheese. What is it about eggs, meat, and cheese that you don't understand? For 30 days, trust me. That's all I tell people. Just trust me for 30 days. I'll prove it to you. That the more fat you eat, the better your fats in your bloodstream will go down. Because your triglycerides are not formed from eating fat. Your triglycerides are formed from not eating fat and eating carbohydrates. That's how your triglycerides go. And as your triglycerides go up, your good cholesterol goes down. You know what your good cholesterol is? Your HDL. And that's why, in a nutshell, why we have so much, not only gallbladder problems, but we have so much heart disease. If you wanted to, at one time, and by the way, what I didn't tell you in the story of President Eisenhower, he was a smoker. He smoked 4 packs a day. What is the new smoking? Sugar. Crappy carbs. Kids are being weaned on crappy carbs, and you know what? They got fatty liver coming out of their ears at a young age. They're starting to destroy their blood vessels at a young age. Don't wait till, doc, I'm not a diabetic. Yeah, you are. Yes, you are. You got high triglycerides? Yeah? Well, you're really a diabetic. You just don't get the diagnosis of diabetes because the last thing that will happen in your body, not the first thing, the last thing that will happen in your body, because your body is trying to keep you away. Your body knows what to do with sugar. You know what it does? It takes it out of your bloodstream. That's insulin's job. Out. Remember the traffic cop. Get the sugar out of your bloodstream. So, doc, I need a little bit of sugar. No, you don't. Sugar is so toxic that your pancreas knows to get that sugar out of your bloodstream immediately. Can't stay there. You parked in the wrong spot in the blood. No, you don't, sugar. You cannot stay there. And people don't realize that. If you eat, let's say you had 14 teaspoons of sugar. I know a lot of people in one Pepsi have 14 teaspoons of sugar. One Pepsi. My granddaughter is, what do they call them at Starbucks? A barista? She's the cutest barista I've ever seen at Starbucks. She said, Grandpa, you wouldn't believe the sugar they put in there. You wouldn't believe how much, when she's making a drink, it's almost nauseating how much sugar they put in those, kids are having these lattes and whatever. I don't know what they drink. Okay, I've never had one in my life. I don't even know what they really are. Like if I'm going into Starbucks, I'm having a vitamin C, coffee, black. But your blood, guys, even if, let's say you have a Pepsi with 14 teaspoons of sugar. I remember doing a commercial one time. I wrote a book. It was Medical Crisis Secrets Your Doctor Won't Share With You. And when I wrote that book, we actually did a commercial in the United States for the book. It was just a short little infomercial commercial. It was very short. And I remember on the set, we had a can of Pepsi. It might have been Coke, I don't remember. Same difference. And I was putting the amount of sugar right in the commercial. So, well, you have one of these, see? Because that was part of the book. I talked about that in Medical Crisis. Secrets your doctor won't share with you. And that was a very popular book. And I talked about sugar. But even if you had those 14 teaspoons of sugar, you know what would happen to your blood? Well, temporarily, sugar would go up. It would spike up fast. Okay? Ladies, steel cut oats. Hey, Dr. Martin, I gotta have oatmeal because I won't go to the bathroom if I don't have my oatmeal in the morning. You know how many times I heard that? In my 46 years of practice, from sweet little old ladies and some men, but mostly old ladies. Oh, Dr. Martin, if I don't have my oatmeal in the morning, I have my bowels. You know my bowels? No, I don't know your bowels, but I know one thing. Your sugars are going up to about 21. Now you're going to need a massive amount. So can you imagine what a Pepsi does if steel cut oats bring your sugars to 21? But your body, you see, it reacts to it. So what happens is the body senses that right away. Your sugars have gone up to 21. Now the amount of insulin that your pancreas will secrete, because you know what insulin job is? Sugar, come here. You can't stay in the bloodstream. You parked in a non-parking spot. You cannot park there. You must come with me. And then the traffic cop, insulin, takes it and sends it to your liver, to your muscles, or it'll make fat cells. Because, your muscles are full. Oh, your liver's full. Let's make more. You know what insulin knows what to do? It knows how to make more parking spots around your liver. What do you think belly fat is? I'll tell you, I went in the 1970s. I can hardly think of one woman that I ever met that wasn't pregnant that had a belly. Women just didn't have bellies. Now, they might have packed some weight on around their hips. But even then, that's estrogen. I should do a whole thing on that, isn't it? How do you know? It's kind of funny, but, I tell Rosie, see that lady there? That's estrogen. She got a belly? Well, that's insulin. That's your sugar belly. You don't get sugar belly. You don't get sugar fat on your thighs, ladies. You get estrogen there. Anyway, that's a whole different. But you see what your insulin does? Your insulin will not allow you to for sugar to stay high in your bloodstream. It will destroy your blood vessels. That's how toxic sugar is. So, guys, don't wait till you're a diabetic. Your body, you know what diabetes is? Diabetes is when it's not when your blood sugar is over 7, like medicine will say. No, you're a diabetic years before that. Years before that. You're a diabetic when your triglycerides are going up. because your body's producing more fat from sugar. So one of the things, I thought I was going to get through more. We're already almost out of time. One of the consequences, we'll continue this tomorrow, but one of the consequences of a low-fat diet has been the gallbladder. The other one has been the liver. The low-fat diet has destroyed the health of our livers, because liver is a parking spot for carbohydrates, more particular sugar. And the worst sugar in the universe is fructose. You know how a bear gets fat? How does an animal prepare for hibernation? How does an animal protect itself against starvation? They do it instinctively. They eat fructose. And that, look, I understand, even fruit, they go, Dr. Martin, fruit. Yeah, but not too much. We live in a different world today. We're not out on the farm like we used to be. We live in a crazy world where we overeat big time and very, very much undernourished. And one of the things that's missing in most North American diets is animal fat. And when you go fat-free, when the world went for it, they went for it hook, line, and sinker. It started to destroy our health. Because the biggest causes in the 1950s and the 1960s of heart disease and cancer had nothing to do with food. The biggest factors in heart disease, blood pressure, had nothing to do with salt. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the fact that people smoked. Now, it's not smoking, although, some people didn't get that memo. But today, it's the biggest factor in disease, all of it, including the virus. All of it is a lack of fat in our diet. Tomorrow I'll touch on it. I'll talk about the immune system and how we got duped, how we got swayed by the lack of science. They call it science, but it's far from it. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Okay. So I gave you an introduction today. Okay. So again, thanks so much for watching today. Big crowd on. Fantastic. We appreciate that big time. You have no idea. Yesterday I was talking about invite your friends and family to join the Martin Clinic private Facebook group. Don't ask me how to do it, just do it. I wouldn't be able to tell you how to do it. But it's a great club. It is. It's wonderful. Good conversations in there, and it's fantastic. If you're not listening to our podcast, sign up for our podcast at martinclinic.com, okay? We appreciate that. And if you get a chance, that really helps in the podcast, is give us a review of the podcast. It really makes a big difference, because the podcasts are sent out even to more people. That's how it works, part of it. Okay? Don't ask me too much detail. I'm going to mess it up. Okay, no, seriously, guys, we thank you very much for watching. We appreciate it so much. And we talk to you soon. Love you guys, and I mean that.